June 11, 1944. Normandy, France, agricultural field 3 kilometers south of Carentan. 217 American infantrymen crouched in hedgerows and shallow drainage ditches. They had been in position since 04:15 hours. Current time 06:03. Dawn had broken 42 minutes earlier. Weapons were loaded, magazines inserted, safeties off. M1 Garand's Thompson submachine guns, bars positioned at intervals along the line. Mortars were set up behind the forward positions, tubes angled, rounds stacked beside them. Across 500 meters of open pasture, a German strongpoint occupied a stone farmhouse and outbuildings. Sandbags at windows, machine gun positions visible at second-floor corners, antenna on the roof. Estimated strength, platoon-sized element, perhaps 40 men. Intelligence indicated communication equipment inside. The position-controlled approach routes into Carentan from the south. The battalion commander had approved the assault plan at 22:00 hours the previous evening. Written orders had been distributed to company commanders. Attack time, 06:00 hours. Artillery preparation, 5 minutes. Infantry advance immediately following. Objective, neutralize the strongpoint, secure the buildings, continue north toward the town. It was now 06:03. No artillery had fired. No order to advance had been given. The men waited. Officers checked watches. Radio operators monitored their sets. The German position showed no activity. No movement at the windows. No sounds across the field. Complete silence. The assault time had passed. Nothing had happened. The unit was the 2nd Battalion, 506th Parachute Infantry Regiment, 101st Airborne Division. They had dropped into Normandy on D-Day, 5 days earlier. Combat had been continuous. Casualties had been significant. The battalion was now operating at approximately 60% strength. Fatigue was universal. Ammunition was adequate but not abundant. Morale remained functional despite exhaustion. The farmhouse strongpoint had been identified on June 9 during reconnaissance patrols. German forces were withdrawing toward Carentan but maintained defensive positions to delay American advance. This particular position was well sited. Good fields of fire, solid construction, multiple avenues of withdrawal for the defenders. Taking it would be costly but appeared necessary for continued movement north. Battalion S3, the operations officer, had drafted the assault plan. Standard doctrine for reducing fortified positions, artillery preparation to suppress defenders, followed by rapid infantry assault in multiple waves, close combat to clear the buildings, consolidation on the objective. The plan was reviewed by the battalion commander and approved. Company commanders received their orders at the evening briefing. Platoon leaders briefed their men. Everyone understood the mission. Terrain offered minimal cover between the American start line and the objective. The field was flat pasture, recently grazed, grass short. A shallow stream ran diagonally across the middle, perhaps knee-deep. 2 hedgerows broke the open ground but provided only concealment, not protection. Anyone crossing would be exposed to direct fire from the farmhouse for at least 3 minutes. Smoke was planned to obscure movement, but smoke required wind cooperation and provided only visual cover, not ballistic protection. Weather conditions were acceptable. Overcast sky. No rain. Visibility approximately 2 kilometers. Temperature cool but not uncomfortable. Wind light and variable, not ideal for smoke employment but manageable. Ground was firm, no mud to impede movement. Tactically, conditions were neither particularly favorable nor unfavorable. The assault was feasible. The men had been moved into attack positions during darkness. Movement had been quiet and controlled. By 04:15, all elements were in place. Company commanders confirmed readiness via radio. Artillery liaison confirmed fire support was prepared. Mortar crews confirmed readiness. Medical personnel were positioned for casualty evacuation. Everything was set. The operation was ready to execute exactly as planned. American infantry doctrine emphasized aggressive offense. Training at bases in the United States and England had drilled assault procedures repeatedly. Paratroopers were expected to be particularly aggressive, elite troops, highly motivated, willing to accept casualties to achieve objectives. The culture of the airborne divisions reinforced this expectation. Hesitation was not part of the organizational identity. Standard assault procedure was clear. Artillery fires for prescribed duration. Infantry moves on signal. First wave reaches objective and establishes foothold. Follow-on waves reinforce and expand. Objective secured and consolidated. Officers led from the front. NCOs pushed men forward. Momentum was critical. Once initiated, an assault was driven to conclusion. Stopping mid-assault invited disaster. Men caught in open ground. Organization fragmenting. Initiative lost. The battalion had conducted similar assaults multiple times since D-Day. Attacks on German positions at various locations. Some successful with acceptable casualties. Some extremely costly. Men had seen friends killed. They understood what crossing open ground under fire entailed. But they also understood that missions were accomplished through execution of orders. The system functioned because everyone did their part. Orders were given. Orders were followed. Artillery preparation was expected to last 5 minutes. 105 howitzers from division artillery. 30 rounds assigned to this target. High explosive. Purpose: suppress German defenders, damage fortifications, create shock effect. The infantry would advance during the final minute of artillery fire, timing their arrival at the objective as fires lifted. This required precision coordination but was standard procedure. Smoke rounds were allocated for the mortars to fire once the infantry began moving. White phosphorus. Purpose: obscure German observation, reduce accuracy of defensive fire. The smoke would not stop bullets, but it would make aimed fire more difficult. Combined with speed of movement and aggression of assault, it would reduce casualties. This was the theory. Reality varied, but the procedures were sound. The men waiting in the hedgerows knew what was about to happen. Some had done it before. First-timers had been briefed and had watched others. Everyone knew the next few minutes would be violent. Casualties were certain. Who would be hit was random chance. But the mission would be accomplished. The farmhouse would be taken. The unit would move on. This was understood. This was expected. This was what was supposed to happen next. At 06:04, the battalion commander arrived at the forward command post. He came on foot from the rear. No runner had been sent ahead. He appeared suddenly among the company commanders positioned just behind the assault line. He carried no visible radio. His aide was not with him. He had walked forward alone. He spoke briefly with the senior company commander. The conversation was quiet, too quiet to be heard by soldiers 10 meters away. It lasted perhaps 20 seconds. The company commander's face showed no expression. He nodded once. The battalion commander turned and walked back the way he had come. The company commander stood without moving for several seconds. Then he moved to each platoon leader in sequence. Brief words to each. Same neutral expression. Platoon leaders returned to their positions. They did not gather their squads. They did not issue orders. They remained in place. At 06:07, word passed along the line in whispers. Hold position. No advance. No artillery. Wait for further orders. The message moved from soldier to soldier. Confusion was visible in faces, postures, glances, but discipline held. No one stood. No one questioned aloud. The line remained in position. No artillery fired. The time for artillery preparation 06:00 to 06:05 had passed. The tubes were silent. No smoke rounds were launched. The mortars remained unfired. Across the field, the German position showed no change, no reaction, no indication they were aware of what had been planned and then not executed. The assault time had come and gone. The plan existed. The orders existed. The preparations were complete, and nothing happened. Time moved differently after 06:07. Minutes felt longer. The tension of imminent combat had peaked, preparing bodies and minds for violent action. That energy had no outlet. Men remained crouched in uncomfortable positions, muscles tense, adrenaline elevated, waiting for something to happen. Nothing happened. At 06:15, some soldiers began to shift positions slightly, easing cramped legs, adjusting equipment, seeking more comfortable stances. Officers and NCOs made small gestures. Stay down, stay quiet, maintain position. Discipline held, but the confusion deepened. An assault had been scheduled. Everyone had been prepared. Now they simply waited with no explanation. Radio traffic was minimal. Occasional check-ins between company commanders and battalion headquarters. Nothing substantive. No new orders. No clarification. The standing order remained, hold position. The German strongpoint remained occupied and visible. The tactical situation had not changed. Only the American intention had changed, or been suspended, or abandoned. No one knew which. At 06:23, a soldier near the center of the line asked his squad leader in a whisper what was happening. The squad leader shook his head. No answer. The soldier asked if they were still attacking. The squad leader said, no word. The soldier settled back into position. The exchange was brief and quiet, but it represented the confusion felt along the entire line. The mission had been clear. Now it was unclear. Clarity had been replaced by waiting. At 06:35, the first soldiers began to relax slightly. Not standing, not lowering weapons, but the acute readiness for immediate combat began to fade. 35 minutes had passed since the scheduled assault time. If the attack were simply delayed, new orders would have been issued by now. The absence of orders suggested something more than delay. Cancellation seemed likely, but no official word had been given. Officers moved along the line periodically, checking positions, offering no explanations. Their faces showed nothing. When soldiers looked at them questioningly, they received slight head shakes or hand gestures meaning, quiet, wait, no information. The command structure was functioning, but information was not flowing downward. Decisions were being made at battalion level. Those decisions were not being shared. By 07:00, an hour had passed since the scheduled assault. The sun had risen higher. The day was developing normally, birds, distant sounds of other military activity, the ordinary progression of morning. But the assault line remained in position, frozen in time, waiting for orders that did not come. The battalion commander's decision was later documented in a brief entry in the unit journal. Attack on objective postponed pending clarification of enemy disposition and availability of supporting fires. The entry was timed at 06:15 hours, June 11, 1944. No additional detail was provided in the journal. The operation simply did not proceed as planned. Subsequent accounts, compiled from interviews conducted years later, indicated that the battalion commander had received intelligence updates during the early morning hours that suggested the German position might be more heavily reinforced than initially assessed. Reports from adjacent units indicated German forces had been moving through the area during the night. The composition of forces in the farmhouse strongpoint was uncertain. Additionally, coordination with division artillery had encountered difficulties. The fire support that had been promised and planned was not confirmed as available at H hour. Communication problems between battalion and artillery units created uncertainty about whether the preparatory fires could be delivered as scheduled. Without artillery support, the assault would be significantly more costly. The battalion commander had conducted a personal reconnaissance forward at approximately 05:45 hours. He had observed the objective and the terrain. He had assessed the plan against the updated intelligence and the unclear artillery situation. He had determined that the conditions no longer supported executing the assault as approved. The risk-to-benefit calculation had shifted. The decision was not framed as a refusal to attack. It was framed as a tactical postponement based on changed conditions. This was within the battalion commander's authority. Orders from higher headquarters provided objectives and timelines, but battalion commanders retained discretion regarding specific execution. If conditions made an operation inadvisable, postponement was an acceptable command decision. The battalion commander did not consult with his staff before making the decision. He did not call a meeting of company commanders. He made the assessment individually, based on his evaluation of the situation. He then communicated the decision directly to the senior company commander and departed. The decision was his alone. The responsibility was his alone. The outcome, 217 men not crossing that field, was the result of his individual judgment. No written order canceling the assault was issued at that time. The operation simply did not commence. The absence of artillery fire at 0600 was the first indicator. The battalion commander's visit to the forward command post was the confirmation. The verbal order to hold position was the execution. The assault existed on paper but was never initiated in reality. The gap between plan and execution was created by a single decision made in the pre-dawn hours and communicated in quiet words at a hedgerow. At 07:15, orders came to withdraw from the assault positions. Movement was to be conducted in stages, maintaining security, returning to the positions held the previous day. The withdrawal began at 07:30. Platoons pulled back in sequence. Weapons were safed. Equipment was gathered. The line that had been prepared for assault dissolved quietly. By 08:00, the battalion had reoccupied its previous defensive positions. Soldiers returned to routine activities, eating cold rations, cleaning weapons, catching sleep where possible. The farmhouse strongpoint remained in German hands. No change in the tactical situation. The morning's preparation and tension had produced no tangible result. Company commanders were called to battalion headquarters at 09:00 for a briefing. The meeting lasted 15 minutes. The battalion commander explained that the assault had been postponed due to insufficient intelligence and uncertain fire support. A new plan would be developed. Reconnaissance would continue. The objective remained valid, but timing was deferred. Company commanders acknowledged and returned to their units. No formal announcement was made to the troops. Squad leaders informed their men that the attack had been called off, timing to be determined later. Some soldiers expressed relief. Others showed frustration. The psychological preparation for combat had been exhausting, and the sudden cancellation left that energy unresolved. Most simply accepted it as another instance of military uncertainty. Plans changed. Missions were postponed. This was normal. The German position showed no indication that its occupants were aware of how close they had come to being attacked. No increase in alert status was visible. No reinforcements arrived. The routine of occupation continued. If German forces in the farmhouse had any sense that an American assault had been prepared and then cancelled, they gave no sign. The day proceeded normally for them. By afternoon, the battalion had moved to a different sector. New orders had been received from regiment. The focus shifted to a different objective. The farmhouse strongpoint was no longer the battalion's concern. Another unit would address it, or it would be bypassed, or German forces would withdraw on their own timeline. The mission that had consumed planning and preparation for 12 hours simply ended without execution and without further reference. The following day, German forces withdrew from Carentan. The farmhouse was abandoned. American forces occupied it without resistance on June 13. The strongpoint that had been targeted for assault on June 11 was empty when finally reached. Whether the assault would have been necessary, or costly, or successful became an unanswerable question. The reality was, it never occurred. No after-action report was filed for an operation that did not occur. The unit journal entry was the only official documentation. The assault plan existed in written orders distributed on June 10. Those orders were not formally rescinded. They simply became irrelevant when the operation was not executed. The paperwork suggested an assault was intended. The reality was silence. No casualties resulted from the decision. 217 men who might have crossed that field did not cross it. How many would have been hit by German fire is unknowable. The estimate in the original planning had been 10 to 15% casualties. roughly 20 to 30 men killed or wounded. Whether that estimate was accurate cannot be determined. The casualties were never incurred. The statistic remained theoretical. The battalion commander's decision received no formal recognition. No commendation was issued for choosing not to attack. No criticism was recorded for failing to execute approved orders. The decision existed in a space between action and inaction that military bureaucracy did not readily process. Orders executed generated reports. Orders refused generated investigations. Orders quietly not executed generated nothing. Soldiers who had been in the assault line carried the memory individually. Some later recounted the incident in personal narratives or interviews, the morning they prepared to attack and then didn't. The tellings varied in detail and emphasis. Some remembered relief, some remembered confusion, some remembered frustration. None remembered celebration. It was simply something that happened, or rather didn't happen, during the Normandy campaign. The farmhouse itself was damaged in later fighting and eventually demolished. The field was returned to agricultural use after the war. The ground across which 217 men did not advance in June 1944 shows no trace of that non-event. Nothing marks the place where an assault was planned, prepared, approved on paper, and then never executed in reality. The battalion commander continued in command through the remainder of the Normandy campaign. He led the battalion in Operation Market Garden in September 1944 and during the Battle of the Bulge in December. He was wounded in January 1945 and evacuated. He survived the war and retired as a colonel in 1960. His service record shows competent leadership and multiple decorations. The June 11 decision appears nowhere in his official file. In a 1983 interview conducted for a military history project, the battalion commander was asked about difficult decisions during the war. He mentioned several combat actions, casualties, tactical challenges. When specifically asked about operations that did not proceed as planned, he paused and then referenced a morning near Carentan where we were supposed to attack but I called it off. He did not elaborate. The interviewer did not press. The incident occupied 2 sentences in a 2-hour interview. Several soldiers from the assault line later wrote memoirs or participated in oral history projects. A few mentioned the aborted attack. One described it as the attack that wasn't, we were all set to go and then nothing happened. Another wrote, I was ready to die that morning and then we just went back to where we'd been. A third noted, the old man called it off. Don't know why, we lived another day. The incident was remembered but not dwelt upon. The company commanders involved all survived the war. One remained in the army and retired as a general. One left service and worked in business. One became a teacher. None wrote extensively about the June 11 incident in accessible records. It was one decision among thousands made during the campaign. It had no dramatic outcome to commemorate. It simply was. The German forces who occupied the farmhouse on June 11 cannot be identified from available records. They were part of units withdrawing toward Carentan. They survived that day, unaware that an assault had been prepared against their position. Some may have survived the entire war. Some likely did not. Their individual fates are unknown and unconnected to the assault that never occurred. June 11, 1944, was one day in a campaign that lasted months. Thousands of tactical decisions were made by commanders at all levels. Most are unrecorded in detail. Some resulted in combat. Some resulted in movement without combat. Some resulted in nothing visible at all. The assault that was approved on paper but never in reality belongs to the last category. Military operations exist in 2 forms, the plan and the execution. Usually these align closely. Sometimes they diverge. When they diverge through enemy action or unexpected obstacles, the deviation is documented and analyzed. When they diverge through command decision to simply not proceed, the deviation often leaves minimal trace. The plan existed. The execution did not. The gap between them is filled with silence. 217 men prepared to attack a fortified position. The orders were written. The preparations were complete. The time came, and the battalion commander, standing in a hedgerow at dawn, decided it would not happen. He communicated that decision in quiet words to a few officers. The assault dissolved before it began. The men withdrew. The day continued. The war continued. The incident faded into the vast collection of things that almost occurred but did not. No conclusion can be drawn about whether the decision was correct. The farmhouse was eventually taken without the assault, but that was 2 days later under different circumstances. Whether attacking on June 11 would have succeeded or failed, cost many casualties or few, achieved something important or something marginal, all of that remains in the realm of the hypothetical. The only certainty is that the assault approved on paper never occurred in reality, and the distance between those two facts is measured in silence.